What's up? I'm George and I'm an alcoholic.
We love you, George! Lots and lots and lots!
Yeah, I never been to one of these before. And when Merle reached out to me, and by the way, thank you so much, that means a lot to he say that. Every time that I talked to her leading up to this, I would text her and she would hit me and be like, I'm working with a sponsee right now, I'll hit you back. And that's dope. To me, that's like when I first started coming to AA, I thought it was corny. And now I think the opposite. I think, getting high and living an active addiction is corny. So when I see people turn their lives around and pass it on to other people, that's the most beautiful fucking thing in the world to me. I also asked that I not speak at a podium, that I be seated. So I've spoken like, and believe it or not, I've probably spoken like 500-600 times, and I've never spoken at a podium yet. So this is the first time. So a lot of firsts. But I'm an alcoholic. It was a beautiful thing to see everybody get their time. It was a beautiful thing to see the kid get 7 days and the girl get 1 day. Although 1 day, most people come in with 1 day, they don't even want to get the 24-hour chip, they're too nervous. I can't imagine with all that ruckus and shit. Still kind of bugged out from yesterday, All the attention and shit, I just want to hide in the back of the room. Sometimes I still want to hide in the back of the room. I was driving up here and my barber was saying to me yesterday, he was like, I told him I was coming up here to speak. He doesn't know he's an alcoholic yet. But he's like, what? Wow, so you got to speak for like 45 minutes, an hour? Like how many pages do you have to write to do that? And I was like, nah, man, I don't write it out. He's like, what, you just freestyle? You go up there and freestyle? And I was like, yeah, it's like a story, like you tell your story, and sometimes it's sloppy, sometimes it's good, sometimes, it's a mess, sometimes you get emotional and shit, and it's just real, and that's how we talk to each other, and that's how we listen. Like when heart speaks, heart listens. So, especially, and that's kind of why I don't like to stand up at the podium, because I spent 20 years walking around the stage like an animal, and when I do that, I pace, and I want to move, and I'm aggressive and all that, and that's Slane. That's not George. George is an alcoholic, and George doesn't like to feel things. George runs away from his trauma and his pain, and I have to get honest and stand up here. This is a totally different thing than me getting up with the beat behind me and having lyrics and a song and people knowing the words. This is different shit. It is. This is how I saved my life. And people think that's like on the music, that the music, a lot of people will hit me up, especially, and be like, yo, is music a big part of your recovery? I'm like, actually, that was like a big obstacle for me. Because it's attached to so many things like ambitions and, validation and all this other shit. And I have to untie myself from that. So that was like the first thing I had to surrender. And people don't like that answer. Now the music is part of my recovery, but, let me not bring, but let me get into my story. So like I said, my name is George, I'm an alcoholic. You love me, you really love me. I'm originally from Dorchester, which is a section of Boston. I see hags in the house. And, but I grew up living and moving all over the city, all around the city. I think I lived in like 17 different apartments. And, for me, I think when I found when I had my first drink, it just lit me up in a way that I don't think I could explain. I think you know. But it's a very difficult thing to explain. It's like, it's the thing that I was always missing, that I never knew I was missing. It changed my perspective instantly. It changed the way that I viewed the world, and it changed the way the world viewed me, in my mind, And I remember feeling like, I want to feel like this the rest of my life, I think like when I put drugs and alcohol, and I know it's AA, and I have a great reverence for AA and respect for AA, but I also know that the illness, the disease, the affliction, whatever you want to call it, is an internal condition. It has nothing to do with the exact substance. So I'll put anything in my system to escape, And I know like when I put drugs or alcohol into my body, I feel like anything is possible. I feel like I'm connected. I feel love. I feel like I'm connected to the universe. I feel like all the fears, like that voice in my head, that voice that lies to me in my own voice. It tells me you're gonna lose everything you have. You're never gonna get what you want. And as you are right now, not fucking good enough. Not good enough. If you do this, then you'll be good enough. If you get this, then you'll be good enough. And when I drink and I get high, that voice gets turned down and goes away. And I feel like anything is possible. My dreams can all come true. And when I look back at it, shit, I mean, like, I don't even know if, I think that the booze saved my life before it almost took it. Because I needed that. I needed to feel connected. I needed to build those relationships. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think like when we get sober, we can say like, all the people say like, well, those aren't your friends, or those aren't your friends, and that's bullshit. I still got a lot of my friends that I drank and used with that I'm still cool with. Like I said, it's an internal condition. I gotta treat myself internally. Doesn't mean I can't hang out with Joe no more. Doesn't mean I can't sit near the bar. It doesn't mean I have to hide in the house. This is recovery. I can go anywhere a free man can go. So, I always sought out, I think, aside from the way it made me feel, I was in love with even more than that. I was in love with the culture. I was in love with the language. I was in love with being part of that society, being part of a different society than everybody else. I could seek out and find other people that drank and got high like I did, no matter where I was in the world. And, that's a key piece. That's like lifestyle, culture, it's belonging, it's everything. And I already know if you're a sucker or not. You know what I'm saying? And I already know if you're cool or not, just walking right into the room. I can already smell it. Everybody got jokes. Man, I pissed like 3 times just while I was waiting for it. Self-centered fear, I was like, fuck, I'm gonna have to piss while I'm speaking. Then I went in the bathroom and I was like, shit, I think I pissed down my leg. That don't go away, we just have a system to deal with it, right? So, I moved on like that. I moved through life drinking and getting high really at alarming levels. And I came to a point in my, the first time I came to AA, I was 18 years old. I was young people's AA. And, but there was no young people in the AA. I went to a meeting, so I called up, so I'll tell you how I got there. I was taking a shit between 2 cars on Huntington Avenue. And this couple walked by, and the woman was very attractive, and when I turned around, I was like halfway through the act, and the woman's face, she looked at me with this look of disgust. I can still recall it, like 30 years later. And it just sent so much shame through me. So the next day I called up my Uncle Jimmy, who had 13 years sober at the time, and I said, Jimmy, I heard you're an alcoholic. He said, who the fuck told you that? And he spent the entire car ride after he picked me up, taking me to AA, talking about anonymity, that thing that you read. And how it was key, and who I saw there, don't say nothing, and don't tell nobody, and all that, And I love Jimmy. But Jimmy took me to my first meeting, and when I went to that meeting, I looked around the room, and I decided, one, that I wasn't as bad as anybody in here. Yeah. I was wrong about that. Two, that I wasn't going to go on telling this shit story the rest of my life. And here I am at a podium doing it, for Christ's sake. Fucking AA. I always hated it when people said that to me. So it took me 15 years to get 30 days sober. And so I went to that meeting when I was 18. 10 years later, I was going to meetings with the opposite perspective, thinking like, these people ain't as bad as me. In fact, I don't even know if they're really alcoholics, because if they were, they'd still be drunk like me. You know, I can get 7 days, I can get 11 days, I can get 13 days, and that's a fight. That shit is so hard for me. With everything on the line, with the house on the line, with the marriage on the line, with my career on the line, with anything, and I want it. I want to stay sober so bad, but I can't. 15 years to get 30 days. And when I got a 30-day chip in Los Angeles, I took it to a hotel that gave a free drink for a 30-day chip. There are some unfortunates. I brought my entire home group to a show that I did, to a concert that I did when I had 20-something days sober. My sponsor on the stage with me, the home group, everybody there support me. And I slugged a bottle of Jameson on stage. I can't stay sober. I was driving up with my sponsor, Glenn, tonight, and I was just saying, man, it's crazy to me now that people know me as sober. It's crazy that my son only knows me as sober. It's crazy that so many people know me as sober, because for so long, I could not stop. The reason I share that is because if you've tried to do this 100 times, 1,000 times, and you haven't been able to, all that means is that you're an alcoholic. You got your answer now. So, my high school sweetheart had kicked me out in my mid-20s, and I was unemployable, and I got fired from the jobs, and in and out of detox and all that. And during the course of that time, I had really started pursuing music, and I pressed up this mixtape. And we pressed up 50 copies of them, and I gave a stack of 10 to 5 different drug dealers. And if you wanted to buy a bag of Coke for $40, it was $50, and you had to take the CD. I always say there's some dude in Dorchester who has 80 copies of my first mixtape. But that worked, and so I had anybody who I would get financing from or backing it was always money from the street, and just in that culture that I was in. So I moved into this warehouse in Roxbury, and we were gonna build a recording studio there. We had big plans for it, and we started building out all the framing to build the studio, and we ended up just having an after hours spot there. And then the dude who was bankrolling it, he ended up getting pinched. And I ended up in that warehouse for 8 months, and everything got shut off, the hot water, the electricity. I had a mattress up on top of the unfinished staging, and I would crash out there. If anybody came in, I was tucked away, and I would charge my cell phone at a bar up the street. And the girl's father had sold the liquor license, and she used to keep it open all night. I would stay in there till 7 a.m., I would drink, I would plug in the phone, and but I started to get a little buzz with the music, and the Boston Herald was doing a story about that. So I left after I was spotted at 7 a.m., and I walked up. If any of you guys are familiar with the Mass and Cass area, we have some graduates. I walked up there. It used to be a Mobile. It's not that anymore. I was just over there, and it's a different kind of gas station now. But it used to be a Mobile, and I grabbed, the Herald had the story about me, and I grabbed every paper that they had in the stack. I'm just thinking this young people say, hey, do you guys know what newspapers are? So I take them back. I take them back to the spot that I was squatting in, and I climb up the ladder, and I'm reading this article, and I passed out drunk. And when I woke up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, my life would change forever. See, I had like 66 missed phone calls, and a bunch of it was just people calling to say they see me in the paper or whatever. But a lot of it was this casting agency that was reaching out to me, and radio station, and a bunch of different other places. And there was an A-list kind of movie star guy in town, and he was directing his first movie, and he read about me in the paper, and he asked me to come in for an audition. And I was kind of beat up, so I was like, yeah, I'll come in tomorrow. And I went up to Dot Ave the next day, and I got good and drunk, and I walked in for this audition, and I ended up getting that role. Now, the newspaper article was about one of my favorite childhood groups. The first rap concert I ever went to was these guys. I had their posters on my wall, like they were my heroes. And I signed a pre-production deal with one of those guys, and I started working with them. And then, the group actually got back together and put me in it. So now I went from like squatting in this warehouse to touring around the world with my favorite band, my favorite childhood rap group, and making a major Hollywood movie. And my high school sweetheart came back. Nah, don't boo her. She's a saint. That's a joke, but we did get back. Not the same part. She's amazing, and so we got married, and we had a baby boy who I love more than anything in this world to this day. And I was living my dream, and I figured out how to drink and use the way that I wanted to, because the answer was always yes. And I could show up drunk anywhere that I want, and I don't have to sleep. I can stay awake 3-4 days at a time. I can drink the way I want to. I'm living my dream. I'm making plenty of money. And I would make sure I let her know that anytime she complained. It's tough, because looking back, I met her the first night that I ever drank. And now, looking at it, I can see like how obvious that is, like that God or the universe or whatever the higher power is made that happen, because, she ultimately saved my life, but man, did I put her through it. See, I like to compartmentalize everything. And, when we would go on tour, so now I'm going out and performing in front of 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 people. We're doing shows year round. And when we go out on the road, we got a thing called a rider, and you can put anything in the rider that you want. And I always put a fifth of Jameson and a fifth of Grey Goose. Other people wild out with it, but that was good for me. So I got a fifth of Grey Goose. I drink that before we go on stage. I got a fifth of Jameson. I drink that the rest of the night. In any city we go to, I just get whatever drugs I can get to keep me going. And the problem is Because I can't leave that out on the road like that. So when I come home to my baby son and to my wife, I'm still like that. And I'm still drinking like that. And then I disappear for 3 or 4 days. And I come home covered in blood with the story. I'm in and out of the emergency room. And I refuse to accept anything you tell me about how messed up I am, or how I need help, or how I'm sick. I refuse, because I'm living my dream. You know, and all my friends that are dying and going to jail, that's them, not me. I'm good. Misinformed by the misinformed. I love those AA sayings. The ones I used to hate. They make so much sense now. So I tried to save my marriage. I checked into detox again. I went to 7 South at the Faulkner, which is not a bad stop. You get your own room and you can order food on the menu. And I liked it. And you know, and what I didn't realize is, you know, because to me it was always booze. I'm an alcoholic. It was always booze, and everything else was just to supplement that and to keep me going longer, to give me the stamina. Because, you know, drinking that much, I mean, my body is just going through warfare at that point. You know, drinking that much booze every day, I was just walking down the street like, ugh, and just keep going. You know, like I would wake up, and my hands are shaking like that. But so was my liver. So was my stomach. So was my brain. My throat's closed like a pinhole. And that landing gear, the Xanax, I never even took that to get high. And boy, was I in for a rude awakening when I checked into that detox. You know, they discharged me after 4 or 5 days, but I mean, I think that detox lasted 6 months from the benzos. And I couldn't sleep for a month, and I couldn't think straight, and I couldn't remember my lies. Yeah. You know. And but the real thing that I couldn't do is I couldn't write. And I'm at the biggest moment of my career. I just did the 2nd movie. The group's album did really well, and my debut album's ready to come out, and I can't do this without booze and drugs. I can't walk on the stage like that. I can't create. I can't write. I can't do any of it. I don't know how to do that. I don't even know how to wake up and put my shoes on and face the world sober. So I was doing the IOP program, trying to save my marriage, and I was trying to finish my album, and I went into the studio and I put a bottle of Grey Goose up on the speaker, and I told my producer, don't let me drink that. That always works. Unless I can't write. And I couldn't write. And I recorded a song that night called Can't Go Home. I still remember it. I still can't listen to the song. And I stopped at the drug spot on the way home, and I got good and high, and I walked into my kitchen in Rosendale with my wife and my son, and she was waiting in the kitchen. She told me to get out. And that was the last night I was married. And I went right back to the drug spot, and I moved in there. I gave the dude $400 a month to rent the back room. It had a hole in the ceiling. There was a bucket for when it rained that caught the water. I probably spent $400 a day on drugs with him. I flew back and forth between LA, and now I can drink and get high the way I want to. And I would argue with my son's mother about, I should be able to take him. You can't keep him from me. But I have supervised visits, and I can't take him in the car. But don't you know who I am? Yeah. It's real shit though, because we can all laugh and have fun with this, and that's what sobriety's about, happy, joyous, and free. But the reason that I'm here to do that is because of this shit. You know, and I've seen many, many people die over this illness. And I've seen many families broken apart from this. And that's why this shit means so much to me. Nobody ever gave up on me. Nobody in AA ever told me, sorry kid, you ran out of chances. Nobody ever said, beat it. We heard you talking shit when last time you relapsed about AA, which I did. You laughing because you did it too, 100 times. And every time I came back, they said, welcome back, we saved you a seat. So when I came home, I would always come home to see my son. When I came home in Christmas of 2013, I saw my son on Christmas Day, but I was supposed to come back the next day, and I didn't make it. And then a friend of mine passed away, and I went to the wake. I'll be there tomorrow. Didn't come. Then I had a show in Philadelphia. I was still awake. I need drugs to stay awake. I perform, I collapse when I get off stage. I'm bent for the next couple of days. I'll be there tomorrow. I'll be there tomorrow. I'll be there tomorrow. On January 2nd, 2014, his mom called me and said, do you have any idea what you're doing to your son? She said, you left him waiting on the steps. He told me, Mommy, Daddy tricked us again. You know, there was decades of shit that should have made me willing to do this. You know, I came into these rooms when I was 18 years old, and I looked at those steps, and I just thought, like, what is that shit? That's what I thought was corny. You know, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, and our lives had become unmanageable. Okay, I got that. But then when you start putting step 2, I got the Heisman. And step 3, Step 3, made a conscious decision to turn my life and my will over to the care of God as I understood him. I mean, that's for saints. I don't even know how to do that. What do I got to do that? I don't know what that means. But I would learn. So, I didn't get sober right then because I had a drink over that. I had a drink over that feeling. And I went back to LA, and I had a terrible tour where I was forgetting my lyrics, blacked out drunk, and everything was falling apart. My life was crumbling all around me, and I was the last one to see it. And after a particularly bad run, I walked into the Comedy Store on Sunset Boulevard, March 3rd, 2014. Now, it was a meeting that one of my bandmates, Danny Boy, he had been trying to take me there, and he was the secretary at the Tuesday meeting, and I was a pain in his ass, you know, drinking that way on tour when he was sober. That was another disrespectful thing I used to do to my AA friends. Like, I would come in to try to get sober, then I'd get smashed right in front of them, you know. And I did that with Danny. Like, I'm on the tour bus with him, and, you know, he's like newly sober in the beginning, and I'm just getting it in. No respect for it. But again, he was like, come on, come back to the meeting, saved you a seat. Be good to see you there. Everybody will be happy to see you. Now, every other time I walked into an AA meeting for those 20 years, I always had hope, like, maybe this time I'll get it. Maybe this will be the time. I know I'm gonna do it this time. I got too many opportunities. Didn't get it. For the first time ever on that day, March 3rd, 2014, I walked into AA hopeless, with full knowledge of the fact that I will drink again. Because this doesn't work for me. I just have nowhere else to go. And I went to a meeting that day, and I got a 24-hour chip. And I hung out with everybody after the meeting, and I went to another meeting at night. And I woke up in the morning, and I went to a meeting. And I went to the Comedy Store again at 1 o'clock, and then I hung out after the meeting with everybody, and I went to another one. And then I asked my friend Maddie to sponsor me. Now Matty was a train wreck. Like, he was an engineer. Like, he was my engineer, and he was wasted all the time. He would hide the beers at the end of the night. I would find him in the microwave and shit. And I mean, Matty was sloppy. And I love Matty. And I was like, man, this guy's got 5 years sober. And I knew I never did those steps. And I was just for the first time now desperate. Like, I knew, like, I'm gonna lose my son, man. Like, I can't take my son in the car. Like, none of this other shit even matters. Like, I realized, like, I'm a horrible father. And the thing is, I love my son. So coming to the recognition, like, I love the person I love the most in the world. I love him so much, and I can't show up for him. So that gave me the willingness. They say you have to do it for yourself, and that's bullshit. It is. I didn't love myself enough to do it for myself. I love my son enough. That's a fact. So I asked Matty to sponsor me, and he started taking me through the big book. He said, look, step one, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and our lives had become unmanageable. You there? I was like, Matty, I've done that for 2 decades. He said, step two, came to believe a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. That was the one that I always rejected. That's what I don't want to do this, you know? And he says, do you think that you're the greatest power? I said, no. He said, well, by reasonable deduction, then, there is a power greater than you. I said, yeah. Yeah, so. He said, what is it? And I thought about it. And I said, the universe. So every time I speak, because it's the crux of the program, the higher power stuff, we can't do it ourselves, right? We can't do it ourselves. You need a power greater than yourself. So for me, it's the universe, and it's a key thing. The sun is the closest star to us. It's 93 million miles away. If it was 100 million miles away, we'd freeze to death. If it was 80 million miles away, we would burn alive. It's not. It's in the perfect place to sustain life. The next closest star to the sun, you have to travel 186,000 miles per second for 4.5 years to reach it. And there are more stars in the universe than there are grains of sand on all the beaches of Earth combined. But the most amazing thing isn't like the number of stars or planets or any of that shit. It's the space between them. It's the depth of the space that's big enough to hold 1 million worlds like this one. That's undeniable. And it's a power greater than me. And I don't gotta argue with you about the Bible. I don't gotta convert to Judaism, become a Buddhist. None of it. I believe in that with my whole heart. So Matty says, I want you to pray. I want you to start asking the universe. He said, you don't have to memorize any prayers. You don't have to do anything else. I just want you to keep it real simple and just ask the universe to please remove your obsession with drugs and alcohol. And I did that every day for 28 days while I was going to all those meetings, and I flew back to Boston brand new. And I walked in and I talked to my son's mother and I was like, I'm sober. I found religion. No. And she was like, great. She's like, I met somebody and I'm getting married. And I was like, what? When did you meet him? She's like, I don't know, a month ago. I was like, you're gonna marry somebody that you met a month ago? You don't even fucking know him. And I went on, I flipped out, you know, and when I left the house, I got in the car and I drove to the bar because that's what I know how to do. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in the bar, I'm gonna have a couple drinks, I'm gonna sort this out, I'm gonna figure out who this guy is, and then I'm just gonna have a simple conversation with him. But for the first time in the history of Alcoholics Anonymous, I called my sponsor. First, before I had the drink. Sitting in front of the bar, I called him and he said, wow. He said, so I guess you want to stay sober, then you call me before you went in the bar. He said, so here's what you're going to do. He goes, I want you to find the next closest meeting. It was a 2 o'clock meeting in Quincy on a Sunday. He said, I want you to go to that meeting. I want you to raise your hand and talk about what you're going through. And he goes, I want you to look for somebody who has 3 days or 5 days sober. Just ask them how they're doing. And he goes, you know how you've been praying, right? I go, yeah. He goes, I want you to go home and pray that they get everything that they want. Motherfucker. That's not on the list. But I did it. I did it because I wanted my son back. Excuse me. And I did it every day for a week because he told me to. I didn't mean it when I did it in the beginning, but I kept doing it. And I started to realize that I was afraid that I was going to lose my son. And I was afraid I was going to be replaced by this guy, right? And I knew that there was one way that would for sure happen, is if I keep drinking and getting high. So I talked to my sponsor and he said, can you believe that in the universe, somewhere in the universe, there's a plan and this is it. And this is going to be the best thing for her, the best thing for this new guy, the best thing for you, and the best thing for your son. I said, I can try. He said, that's a third step. So that thing where it says that I think is only for saints, where I got to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. I don't know how to do that. I still actually don't like the way that step is worded, but I'm not trying to rewrite nothing, I'm just saying. What that principle is right there is non-resistance, and it's a universal law. Right? It's it's the serenity prayer. I can't control other people, places, and things. I can't stop things from happening. It doesn't all depend on me. All I can control is the way that I react. So the next day, she called me up and she said, I want you to come and meet Bill. And I was pissed, of course. So I called my sponsor and I told him, she wants me to meet this dude. And he said, wow, what an amazing woman. And he was like, you mean after you did all that, where you burned her life down to the ground with yours, after she was a loyal friend and a loyal wife to you for years, and you disrespected the marriage in every way possible, you mean she still has enough dignity and grace to ask you to come and meet this guy before she introduces the other guy to your son? Wow. And guess what? I can see he was right. I can see that today. He was right. I was insane. I was insane with all the stuff I was thinking back then. Alcoholism is progressive. Recovery is too. I went and met him. He said, we're not at this part of the steps yet, but this is what we call a direct amends, and this is an amazing opportunity you have to do this. So what you're going to do is you're going to show up there, you're going to shake his hand, you're going to look him in the eye, you're going to show him respect, you're going to allow him to respect you back, and you're going to help her on the way with the rest of her life. And I did that. All foreign concepts to me. And then I flew back to AA, and I kept going to all those meetings every day. I got a 90-day chip for the first day in my life. And on that day, I realized, because I was saying that prayer for my obsession to be removed, that was the first day of my life since I had my first drink that I hadn't thought about drinking. that I wasn't obsessed with drinking and getting high. And for 20 years, I came to this program and couldn't speak. That's why I'm so honored when I get asked to speak now, because it's like I couldn't speak all those years. I remember the first time I was asked to speak. I had 6 months sober, and Danny Boy asked me to speak. And I was like, oh my God, like, I've only had 20 years to prepare for this. But I started thinking about all the people that I lost along the way, and I started thinking about all the times I almost died and all the fucking things that I lost. And for the first time, I was getting my feelings back, and like, you know, I was the brokest I've been since I was squatting in that warehouse that first year of sobriety, but I was happy. I was happy because now I was back in my son's life. I was picking him up, and he was sleeping over, and the change was so evident to her. It started to become so evident to her that I started to get these things back. I started to get my relationship back with my son. And she did marry that guy. She did marry that guy, and they had 2 children. And the first one's name is George. Not after me, but he's Greek. And I love those kids. They call me Uncle George. And Bill is an amazing stepfather to my son, and me and my son have an unbreakable bond. An unbreakable bond. I love him so much. He doesn't remember me leaving him on the steps that day. He doesn't remember me ever having a drink. He only knows me like this. He knows me as a sober dad. Sometimes when I'm in his baseball games, I look around and I think, man, I almost fucking missed all this. And I see other people, I see some of the other dads who struggle, you know. And I hear the way some of the people talk down about them, and I just try to, like, you know, just come with kindness and compassion. I pick their kids up for the game and take them out to eat afterwards. I've lost my judgment for anybody else. We all have, right? It's our job to be the hand of AA. I don't gotta preach it, I don't gotta stand at a pulpit, although you got me standing at this pulpit. So I caught fire with this. How much time do I got left?
You're doing great.
So I caught fire with it now, right? And I started sponsoring people left and right. And meet me here at 3 o'clock. The next dude's coming at 4:30. I'm like, I started to become that dickhead who knows every quote in the book. And you know, I used to wonder, like, how do people know all the quotes and stuff like that? That's kind of weird, you know, like, memorize it. And then but I didn't realize, like, well, you gotta read this with people every day. And I started to know that stuff, you know, and yeah, I caught fire with it, and I was like, man, I'm like the best sponsor in AA. All of my guys are staying sober, right? And yeah, I really was feeling like that. I was feeling myself for a minute, and then my best friend Mike, he had this thing worse than almost anyone. I mean, he was the toughest kid I knew. He was the toughest kid I knew growing up. Like, this kid, he could fight, and just there's nothing you could. I've seen him get hit in the head with bats and like still like be ticking, and that was what made it so hard for him with this disease, because there was no bottom low enough. And his mom called me and asked me to help him get him into detox or treatment. I got him a scholarship, and then he got kicked out because he snuck something in or whatever. And he called me from the bus station. He's like, George, I want to stay sober. Can you take me through this work? And I was like, yeah, I'll meet you at South Station. He took the bus to South Station. I picked him up. I brought him right to my house when we started going into the work. And the lights started coming on for him. I mean, we would never have done this in any other way of life, but we're like on the beach praying, holding hands. It was like insane. And he wrote his fourth step. And he was gonna read it to me on a Saturday. And I had a bunch of stuff going on. I was like, can we do it Sunday morning? I'll pick you up for the 10 knockers meeting and you can read it to me. And I set my alarm for 7 a.m. And I got a call from his parents at 6:30 saying that they found him dead. And it was brutal. You know, in one way, it was like I got to go up and advocate for him. His dad, who has 30-something years sober, spoke to me when I was in detox at the Faulkner on a commitment. He asked me to give the eulogy. He said, "You're his best friend. I want you to go give the eulogy." And I cried every time I was writing and practicing at the house. Like I did write that one. And I went up there and I advocated for my friend because he was the sad story. He was a tragedy. He was down Mass Ave for 10 years. He was sleeping in bus stations, and everyone remembered him like that. But that's not the way that I remember him. I remember him as somebody who taught me how to fight, how to stick up for myself when I was a kid. And me and Mike fought together to the end. But I went cold after that for a little while. I thought I couldn't help nobody, and I started to put my eggs back in the basket of achievement and records and acting gigs and stuff like that. And you know, I was still going to AA, but I think I was like 2-step, and I was doing the first step and 12-step. It talks about that in the 12 and 12, and I found myself in that place. And I told anybody that was like, you know, that was a heroin addict, I can't sponsor you anymore. And you know, like, and I just got like, I don't know if I can explain it properly, but I was like traumatized, and just like the waves of grief and all that. And his dad gave me my 5-year medallion, and that was amazing. But see, I met this girl that I was in love with, and this is an important part because it's like, I can tell you the story of how I got sober and then ended there with like the kids call me Uncle George and I lived happily ever after, right? But like the journey in recovery is just as, I mean, it takes a lot. It takes a lot of work. We go through it without the drink or the drug, and we feel it all, and it fucking hurts sometimes. And I was in love with this girl, and I got a big show, a role on a TV show, and I got signed to this management company in Hollywood, and I was like, now I'm sober 5 years and it's all coming. The property, the prestige, you know, like I deserve it. And I got her pregnant and we lost the baby. And I got written off the TV show. And I got dropped from the management company. And I woke up one day and she left. I don't think that my bottom in active addiction was as bad as the way that I felt right then. I lost 20 pounds in like 3 weeks. It's all come back since the pandemic.
You look great.
And you love me. You really, really love me. I love you guys. You're my people. So I was like, I was gonna drink or get high. I felt like I was gonna drink or get high. I was in too much pain not to. And I met this guy over here just before that when I was speaking at something. And so I've had like 3 different sponsors, all that came at the right time for what I had to go through at that moment. And what he said to me was, this isn't about the girl. Let's find out what it's really about. And I went into 4th step inventory in a way that I had never. See, I had done it like 3 other times before. I was steady with my 10th step. But my other sponsors were cool, and they were my friends, and I don't want to put all the stuff in there, you know? Like, I was sober now, and I think it wasn't even a conscious thing that I was leaving things out. It was that the rapacious creditor came back to collect. And why do I struggle so much with love and relationships and sex? right? And digging deep into that stuff, man, I'm oversharing for this recorded thing. And I started going down to Mass Ave with one of my sponsees, Jade, with his mother, and with Hags over here, my brother Hags. I love Hags. And I got people from my home group over here that I love so much. And I started going down Mass Ave, and the first time we brought jackets and clothes, and I would collect them during the week. I just needed to get out of my head. I knew like meetings just aren't even scratching the surface right now. I got to get into action. And I was going into the tent with sandwiches and talking to people, and when I walked out of there, it was like watching everybody get high and all that. And I walked out of there like I made an amends to Mike, but I made an amends to myself too. And one of the things that I struggled with in my inventory for so long was forgiving other people. You know, I could like make amends and all that stuff, but we only have two choices on a fourth step. That's it. You can either make an amends or forgive. And I really struggled with forgiveness, or I did. So what this gentleman over here told me was, you can't transmit something you haven't got. Don't you think it's time to forgive yourself? And I wrote a 4-step inventory for the first time on myself. Oh my God. It's a long one. Many pages. And I got to the bottom over the course of that 6 months of some really difficult stuff. And I had to forgive myself for the things I did in active addiction. And for the first time internally, I did that because I was doing the best I could with the tools I was given at the time. You know, and I built up this narrative in my head like I lost my family in active addiction. I lost my family, and that's a lie. That's that voice lying to me in my own voice. That's a lie. I still have my family. I have it even more big and beautiful than it's ever been because it's grown. It just changed shapes. And when I came to I had some flashbacks of some things that happened. And then when I came to the realization of all this stuff, and I walked through it after 6 months, and he said, can you forgive that? And I said, I can. And then the girl texted me 10 minutes later after we hadn't spoken in months. She said, you're my best friend. I miss you. I love you. I picked her up. The pandemic came. She lives with me now with her 2 daughters, and I love them so much. And if anything that the pandemic did too is it took me off of living on the road. It put me right where I'm supposed to be, right here with my family. And it made me realize, like, what am I chasing? Am I chasing a bag around the world? Like, what do I need to do that for? I have everything I need right here. I have so much love, so much friendship. I drank and got high because it made me feel like anything is possible. Today, for the first time in sobriety, and it took me a long time to get here in my recovery, today I feel naturally, internally, that anything is possible. That I'm connected, that I'm loved, that I'm worthy of love and respect. I have kindness and compassion for other people. And the best thing that I get to be today is a good father, a good son, a good friend, and a good human being. Thank you. My name is George.